All right, guys, the Grizzly, episode 8, season 8 of Alone. Here's my thoughts. I'm gonna try to do this in one take if I can, because I got a bow class starting here real quick and I need to get through this. So we're gonna start off with Biko. And right off the bat, Biko's having trouble with mice. And I had mice move into my shelter right around this time too. And it seems to happen like this, even here at our house. When we get that first cold snap and get some snow, it just seems like they invade, and they surely did in my shelter as well. I started having them come in. Now, Biko talks about him chewing his string silencers off his bow. And then Matt, we saw earlier in the season, had his bowstring actually cut by a mouse. Now the bow silencers, they love that stuff because they pick it off and they use that in their nests. Now, the way that I got around that is the ridge pole in my shelter. I have 2 paracord loops up there, and I would just hang my bow from the ridge pole so that they couldn't get to it. And any other stuff that I, had that was sensitive, I would just do that. I would hang it from the ridge pole in my shelter, and it seemed to keep the mice at bay. Theresa's having trouble with her clothesline system. To start with, it gets iced up. Where that line is laying on the bank, we've got water that's continually lapping up on it, and it's freezing temperatures. And so it gets a little bit of water spray on it, that freezes. It gets a little bit more, that freezes, and it just builds up on that line. I had some trouble with that type of thing too, and I think maybe we'll see it on the next episode, but we'll have to see. She put a massive investment in putting that trot line out there, and when you put that kind of investment in something and you have that kind of a setback, it can be crushing if you let it be. So another thing that Theresa notices is the lake level is going down, and I saw that as well. And so what's happening there is, in the summertime, you've got these big glaciers up at the top end, and there's a lot of inputs from those glaciers and from the other small streams that are tributaries to that lake. And so as it gets colder, you just have less input because those upper elevations are freezing. Now we see that she does find a couple of fish that are washed up on her shore, and that's interesting and good for her. I actually did find one fish that was washed. It wasn't really washed up. I just saw it kind of floating past my beach pretty early on, and I actually waded out and got it, but it was pretty far gone. It was pretty nasty, and I just let it go. But I did find strangely enough, I found a grouse that was washed up on my beach after a particularly windy night. And I think what happened was that grouse got blown out of a tree, blew out into the lake, which was miles wide, landed in the lake and drowned, and then blew up on my beach, and I found it the next day. And I picked it up, and it was just as fresh as if I had just killed it. So Colter has a dual purpose living room, bathroom, which is hilarious because I did the same thing. It's cold outside, so you just got to improvise. And Colter's fish trap gets stuck, which probably what happened there. The bottom of this lake is made up of cobble, like big cobble and sometimes big boulders. And so I think probably what happened is when he had his float for his fish trap, you can't make that cord tight, because if you get a bunch of waves, it pulls on your float and could move your fish trap. And so you have to have some excess cordage, which is going to lay on the bottom. I think what happened is that cordage probably got wrapped underneath a big boulder and he couldn't get it out. Now, when I saw that, I thought of a way to remedy that situation for anybody that might run into that in the future. But I think if maybe just a few feet above the fish trap, you tied into the cordage a small float so that your excess cordage isn't sitting on the bottom, but it's up a little ways. So if you tie your fish trap down at the bottom, come up maybe 3 or 4 feet, tie a small float, that would keep that excess from sitting on the bottom and getting wrapped up in any rocks. Just a thought. And now we get to Rose. So Rose, right off the bat, she has bobcat tracks on her snare line. Now, we could hunt bobcats. Unfortunately, we couldn't trap them. But anytime you have a predator on your snare line is potentially problematic, because they will learn, if they find a rabbit in a snare, they will learn to track you. They will learn to run your snare line, and a lot of times they'll do it at night and get to those rabbits or anything else that you have in your snare before you get there. So anything that's on your snare line like that could be a big problem for you. And then also we see her, she's getting weak, she's not getting a lot to eat, and she starts having some trouble with frostbite on her toes. Now, she says multiple times in this episode that she has the negative 50-degree Arctic boots. She has heavy wool socks. You know, she has all of the right gear to protect her feet against the cold. Now, what I'm about to say is pure speculation. I have no idea really what actually happened in Rose's situation, but I do know that if your boots are too tight, it doesn't matter how much insulation you cram in there, you will get cold feet. And so it seems like if if you have heavy boots on and you have heavy socks and you stuff your feet in there, it seems like it should keep it warm, but it doesn't. What happens is if you cram your feet too tight in those boots, or if you lace them up too tight, or you have too much trying to insulate your feet, it compresses your feet and it reduces circulation. And that's what keeps your feet warm. You gotta have that circulation in your feet. And she says that a couple of times, that she thinks it's a circulation issue. And so that may have been what happened. If I had to guess, I would guess that's what the problem was. And so sometimes you actually need less insulation. You've got to have a relatively loose fit in those winter boots, because you've got to have that circulation into your toes. Rose goes out on this episode due to a medical tap or a medical extraction. But I mean, Rose is one of the toughest people you will ever meet. And I have no doubt, if there was more game on her property, if there was more rabbits to snare, I have no doubt that Rose could have gone the entire time. All right, so now we can talk about some of the stuff that you saw me doing. First off, I did make a frame for that deer hide, and I was actually gonna try to, I was going to work that hide soft, but with the weather, with it getting cold like that, I couldn't get it to dry. So what I decided to do was just leave it on the frame like that and just kind of use it as a chair, as a recliner. It was actually pretty doggone comfortable. And so I like to set it out facing the sun, and I would just go out. I would drink, I'd make Labrador tea every morning, and so I would just go out there and sit on that, watch the sunrise, let that sun shine on me. You know, the sun, when it hits you on the face like that, when it's cold, when you close your eyes, it just, you know, the sun coming through your eyelids, it makes like this salmon colored pink, and it's very calming. But I enjoyed doing that a lot. Okay, so the first bear that we see me running into is the bear's coming down the beach, and you see me climb up a tree. And so what's going on there is so the wind is blowing from the woods to the lake. The bear's walking down the beach. And so what I wanted to do, I wanted to get good footage of this bear. And so I set up that one camera where you can see the bear coming down the beach and eventually like turn and wheel and run away. So I set that camera up. I go back up into the woods and I take the big camera and I climb up a tree, because what I was trying to do was get my scent above that bear so that the bear could walk underneath my scent and I could film it. And that's why I was trying to get into the tree. Unfortunately, I was a little bit too late, and the bear was already fairly close to me by the time I got up there, and it just heard me rustling around. It may have seen me up there, but it heard me rustling around, turned and ran away, which I was disappointed in, because I wanted that bear to walk right past that camera that I'd set up. That would have been some pretty epic footage. But anyway, I was trying to get good footage of the bear. All right, and so the close call with the bear. So again, I was trying to get good footage of the bear. I wanted to get, like, filming wildlife is a big part of what I do for a living. And so, you know, I just have an interest in getting good footage. And so again, this bear was coming down the beach. And so it was coming towards camp. And so what I did, I grabbed my big camera and I was walking towards this bear. I cut this bear's track, and then I had kind of gotten on the wrong side of it. And so I saw the bear coming. What I was originally going to try to do is go up the beach, get set up, and let this bear walk by me and film the bear as it walked by. What happened was I got on the wrong side of the bear because the bear was in the woods, I was on the beach, and I walked too far up the beach. And the bear had already passed me. And so when I cut into the woods, I saw his tracks and the bear was already over here. Well, when I was sitting here trying to figure out like what I should do next, I looked just in the corner of my eye, I see a flash of brown. And when I first saw it, it was 70 yards away, but he closed the distance very, very quickly. I mean, just a few seconds. So I see this bear coming to me, and it was backlit. And like he had when he was coming to me, it was backlit, and he was fanning out all this snow in front of him, and the sun was shining through the snow. It was a very beautiful scene. But he comes running up to me and stops 8 yards away. And as he's running, you can see in the camera that I kind of run towards the bear there's a fir tree in front of me. And I was just trying to get something between me and that bear. I was trying to get some sort of structure between me and that bear because I didn't know what his intentions were. I didn't know if he was gonna, you know, come straight to me. I wanted something between us. And I actually ended up spraying. But if you watch that footage closely, you can see the bear actually turns to leave before I ever even spray. And I couldn't really see him that good because that fir tree was between us. And I sprayed on the left-hand side of the tree because I thought that the bear may have been coming around that side of the tree. But he was already on his way out by the time I sprayed. Now, this bear, I didn't feel like he was being aggressive towards me. And I said it in the episode. This bear was actually loping towards me. It wasn't like it was a full-on aggressive charge, and I didn't ever feel like I was in a lot of danger. I think what happened was when I came around the backside of that bear heard me. It never saw me. I think he heard me, and he was just coming to me out of curiosity. Now, I've spent my life around large animals, bison, horses, cattle, you know, all kinds of wildlife. And so when you do that, you develop an understanding of how to read animals' body language. And so when this bear was coming to me through the woods, his head was up, his ears were up, and what it reminded me of was if you've ever worked behind a flushing dog, like a bird dog, when they're going in on a flush, you know, that's exactly the body language they have. Their head's up, their ears up, their necks stretched out, they're trying to see, and they are working towards that bird. That's the way that bear looked. And so, you know, he was coming towards me with that type of body language. You know, if his head had been down, his ears had been back, if he had had a different type of body language, that's a completely different situation than what I was in. But like I said, I never felt like that bear was, you know, trying to eat me or was being super aggressive towards me, but it was still a once in a lifetime amazing experience that I will never forget. But anyway, that's my thoughts on episode 8. We got a good preview of what's gonna be happening next episode, on episode 9. You can see I'm having some trouble with a gill net. But anyway, we'll see how that turns out. And yeah, next Thursday I'll have another video on something at 4 p.m. Pacific time, just before the new episode. So we'll see you then.